Hey everyone, it's Tim at Broken Dice, being a quick little channel update, another installment on my solo wargaming project dealing with strategic points for off-table purchases, upgrades to your units, and possibly stuff on a campaign map, which I haven't figured out yet, but we'll see. So, as a lot of you know that have followed some of these videos, I've been doing this on solo. And one of the problems I had with it, I don't like a lot of table clutter. I don't like a lot of extra stuff on the table. It kind of takes away from the miniatures. It takes away from the gaming where you've got to pick up these extras and you got to keep track of all these counters and stuff like that. I'm not a real fan of that. Now, I'm trying to implement something into my solo play that actually does that sort of thing. So how am I going to get around this? So when my buddy Kurt came over and we played this game out, one of the things I thought about doing was, well, instead of having it for each individual unit, let's just have a divisional value because we're playing Hail Caesar and it's all about the divisions on the table and breaking divisions instead of taking individual units. So I tried that where we rolled a dice for each individual unit and then that total became the total number of points that division was worth. Long story short, if you have enough units on the table and you roll enough dice for both sides, it's going to normally, within statistical averages, kind of even out over time, where one side and the other, you're going to have about the same number of strategy points per side. And that is really not what I was looking for. What I'm looking for is for something to be on the table visually that could affect your decision making on the table. And when I did it solo, and I had all the basically the table clutter, all these chips on the table behind each unit, then I could see and go, ooh, that little bitty unit there, it's worth a lot of points. So maybe I can send something to get that and capture a lot of strategic points that I could use later on. Where if you have a very powerful unit and it has very limited, say it has the lowest level of strategic points available, say one, well, you can use that unit to its utmost in the game. You're not hampered by the thought, well, if I lose it, I'm going to lose not only the unit, but I'm also going to lose a certain number of strategic points. Well, that sort of decision making didn't take place because what we did was I stacked all my points up for the division, basically hid them from my opponent, and my opponent did the same to me, placed my division commander on top of them, and it didn't affect the game whatsoever. It wound up playing exactly like a normal game of Hail Caesar. So we're going to have to jettison that. Because it comes a different thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just different than what I'm looking to do. So what I'm thinking about doing to have this stuff back on the table, but not create table clutter, is to do an old thing we used to do back in the day in Warhammer Fantasy, and I'm sure in other game systems they did. Like when you couldn't afford to buy all the miniatures at once, but yet you wanted to get your stuff on the table, what you did, you had unit fillers. And some guys were very creative. I remember one guy, he made like an idol of Gork and put it in the middle of a great big horde of goblins and something. And it took up the space of a bunch of goblins that he didn't have yet. and it was well painted and it looked really cool, and that's what you get. So what I'm thinking about doing is taking that concept and then using that in the solo play on the movement bases that I already have. And so what I'll have to do is, like, these guys here are on a 40 millimeter by 40 millimeter base, 40 by 40. Okay. So if I'm going to use that idea, one of these could come off. I would make something like this to take that same footprint up and place it right on there and have it painted up and maybe where it looked more like it's part of the army than just some thing that's been put on the base. So it could be like I could have somebody like a priestess holding an urn or something and have that on the urn or in the urn, or a number on the urn. Something's got to be capable of doing that, and that way you wouldn't have a lot of extra things laying on the table. And so when you were moving your unit around, it moved accordingly. Um, Rather than doing something like this and just dropping it in there, you can. It's just, again, it just doesn't have the look that I'm looking for. Okay. So that's where I'm at in this. I'm kind of in a little bit of a quandary over this. I'm trying to figure out a way that I can do this without destroying the look of the army on the table. I'm going to have to, do something along those lines, but you know, and I think it would be easier, like that unit of spare bar out there. There's like, what are those, 50 guys in that unit. It's a huge unit. Take out a couple, because these are 20. Oh, shoot. These are 20 by 40s. It wouldn't take much just to hide that in the back in there, so you would know that it was there, but it wouldn't be that noticeable. Well, when you get like a unit of cavalry, like these guys right here, if I take one guy off, let's just say I take a guy off, and then I put one of these in here, again, it's got that, it's kind of got that, it's an extra thing feel to it. And I don't know, just, I'm not real happy with that. So that's what I'm going to try to figure out. I got to figure out some way to do this, because grouping them together with a commander, it doesn't give you the visual to where you can make a choice about something. It just plays out like a regular game. But if something like that was with a unit, then I think that it would be much closer to what I'm looking for. But we'll see. But it was a fun game. Learned a lot. The light cavalry just toasted me up so hard it was terrible. It was. I mean, I could not catch them, and they kept just shooting and running. And it was that's what did the game in for me. So everybody stay safe, stay well. If you have an idea of what might look right, because I'd have to do something for each army, perhaps like a shield, something to where it would look like, maybe I kicked around the idea of, like, a trophy, like a stack of shields, spears, and swords and stuff, and then have that represent something, as opposed to having an actual dice on the table. I don't know. I might just simplify it and use a dice caddy and a unit filler and be done with it. I'm thinking maybe that might be the way to go. If I could get really creative and really outlandish with it, but I don't know if I want to spend that kind of extra time on doing something like that just for my solo game. Okay. Well, that brings us to the end of this. Again, if you got any ideas, please leave them down below. I'm willing to listen to anything right now. I'm kind of at a roadblock. So everybody stay safe, stay well. I'll see you next time.